you only want to really adjust these when they're being installed new.
Aha. So with pressurized pipe, coming in from the street can be anywhere from 140 to 160, maybe 200 sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I think maybe the most we've seen is like 175 PSI around there.
Pounds per square inch. Yep. That's
I would say most common, probably be like 125 probably from the street.
Yeah. So because of that, because there's so much pressure coming from the street, we have to use what's called a water pressure regulator.
Yes.
And that's right here. And this guy is pretty heavy. See how long I can hold it here. It's like a workout. It's a shoulder workout for the front delts.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is a water regulator. And as a home inspector, what I like to do when I show up at a property, one of the first things I check is water pressure.
Yes, very important.
And the reason I do that is because it just lets me know, first of all, hey, well, what is the reading? First of all, what's the reading? Is it above 75? Right. And my rule of thumb is if it is above 75, I make a note. There's regulator needs to be checked because it's rated. The range is 25 to 75 on these labels.
Right.
So the old what's the word I'm looking for? The old standard is, it's 80 PSI. Everybody always says 80.
Right.
I understand. It's a little bit higher than 75. But you got to ask yourself, well, who told you it's 80? Where'd you get that information from? Right. So what we all get in the habit of doing is just listening to what the other guy said, what our buddy said, or our old boss said. Well, I try to look into stuff a little bit when I can, and it got me looking at these labels a lot. Because everyone's saying this, everyone's saying this guy says this plumber says that. So at the end of the day, the manufacturer is most likely going to know what their product should be rated for.
Right.
So that's why I look at the label on here, and that label clearly states the range 25 to 75. It shows you the max PSI that can come into this valve too, which is like 300 on this one.
Right.
So that I like to start knowing exactly what the pressure is when I'm inspecting a house. So if I see it way over 100, or even if it's in 90 or higher, then I'm going to be really looking closely on the inside of the house for evidence of running toilets, faucets leaking or dripping,
yes,
potential plumbing leaks already happening, like maybe inside a wall. I know I can't see inside of a wall, but you got to pay close attention when you're looking in cabinets and for staining. And I've seen bad regulators. I'm talking 160 to 200. I've seen pressure at houses on all the hose bibs.
Right.
So I know the entire house had way too high of pressure, and I called the listing. I said, you need to get a plumber here today because you may have a major pipe break here that could happen at any moment. And there was evidence of leaking all over the house. The water pressure TPR, pouring water.
Nice.
It was a mess. The house had staining everywhere. There's probably leaks inside the wall and stuff like that. What's your experience with that?
So yeah, just to kind of touch bases a little deeper on the regulator. So yeah, like we said before, a lot of times the water, coming from the city is 125 PSI. And then what happens is the water from the city will go through the regulator, and then when it comes out the other side, it's supposed to be, under 75 PSI, is what the tag says, the highest rating on here.
So it reduces it down. It
reduces the pressure down. The reason is all the plumbing fixtures inside your home were only designed to handle less than 80 PSI. So all your faucets, shower valve, toilet fill valve, washer machine, dishwasher, everything in the house, it has inexpensive plastic parts and rubber gaskets. Yeah. They can't handle high pressure over 80 PSI. Or if the pressure goes over 80, the problems that start to happen, you get runny toilets, drippy faucets. There could be an old water supply line under a sink with rust on it. It could be a greater risk to, explode and have water damage. Also puts extra wear and tear on the piping. you can get strange sounds and noises. So when you have high pressure going into the home, it's like having high blood pressure on your body, where you would get weird side effects and things like that.
Symptoms, yep.
Yeah, so it's very important to have a working regulator, protect the plumbing and the plumbing fixtures in your home.
I've also seen on some houses where the pressure relief valve at the water main is dripping.
Yeah, so that's an indicator. In a lot of cases, for it to be code after the regulator, there's supposed to be a relief valve.
Yeah.
Where if the pressure went over 150 psi, it would start dripping, and that would be an indicator that the regulator has failed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that. Yeah.
But let's discuss the reality of that. Most people don't put those valves in; they put hose bibs in.
Yeah, a lot of times exactly. I mean, sometimes you don't see them at all if someone kind of reconstructed the piping at the front of the house and didn't really know.
That's
what they
something
were doing.
I write up pretty regularly at.
No relief valve on the exterior.
No relief valve in sight. Or I've actually caught it where it's before the regulator.
I see, where they did it backwards.
Yeah, so that's the reality of what I find.
Yeah, so regulators, very, very important thing, and it's a very common problem to come up in home inspection reports. I would say they usually only last between 5 and 7 years before they, have to be changed out, and you have to get a new one.
Okay.
Because the parts inside of it do wear out over time with the high pressure from the city.
You mean something? You mean there's something that was made by man that wears out? Really, guys? Everybody watching and listening, everything has an end date.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe that PEX doesn't. We don't know that yet, but maybe the PEX pipe doesn't. But this stuff here definitely does. And can you get into detail on the adjustment on that?
Yes. So when you install this, what you want to do is you want to hook up a water pressure test gauge downstream of the meter or the regulator, excuse me. And you want to turn on the test gauge. Usually when these are fresh out of the box, they'll show around 50 PSI is what it's down. I like to crank them up a little more so the customer's not complaining about low water pressure. So I always try to set them around 65 PSI, around 65, 67 PSI is the sweet spot. So how you do that is you have your test gauge on this side, and then there's a set screw here. You loosen the set screw here, and then the bolt on the top, you tighten it clockwise. So by tightening it, you increase the pressure. Okay. So tighten it down brings the pressure up. But you kind of go slowly and gradually and watch your gauge as you're doing it. Now, one thing that's very important to know is you only want to really adjust these when they're being installed new.
Aha.
So I see that a lot in home inspection reports, not from John's, but I've seen other reports where
not from John's. Make a note of that. Not from me.
The regulator is obviously like 10 years old or older, and the inspector on his notes is recommending that the regulator be adjusted, and that's not really a proper recommendation. Because we cannot, if you go back and you try to adjust pressure on a really old regulator, chances are you're just going to break it and make things worse. It's not, the parts on the inside at that point from sitting in place long-term are frozen. And if you try to adjust it, you're just going to make things worse. So really the adjusting is on the first installation, you set it and forget it. Okay. And then if you're taking a reading many years down the road and it's showing over 75 PSI, it means the regulator's gone bad and you have to replace it.
All right. You just brought up a really good point, a really good home inspector point. So I want to get into that a little bit. Now, let me explain why what Robert just explained about another home inspector saying it needs to be adjusted. Okay, that is something he should not have wrote in his report, and I'll tell you why. First of all, how does he know if the valve has failed or not? He doesn't know that. So he should not be saying that it just needs adjustment. Because guess what? If he says it only needs adjustment, and then the plumber comes out and tries to adjust it and it doesn't work, oh, it's failed.
Right.
Guess that home inspector is probably going to get a phone call to pay for that.
And then also it kind of confuses, the realtor and the buyer. They think it just needs a simple adjustment. Yeah. And then I come along and say, oh no, it needs replacement. And it kind of takes their breath away. They weren't expecting that. Right.
So guys, don't say that no more. Just say water regulator needs further evaluation. And then I always take a picture of the pressure gauge when I'm testing the pressure with my gauge. So I just put that in my report to show where it's at when I was there. And then if it, like I said, to me, if it's above 75, I call it out. I don't wait till 80 or 90 to call it out. I call it out if it's anywhere above 75, only because that's what it says.
Yeah, that's exactly what the tag says.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah. Is it worth?
Yeah, you're not going to see that. It's really
small.
fine print, but I'll take a picture of it and I'll put it in the video version of this podcast so everybody can see that. So that's the best way to report it, guys. If you're reporting this stuff as a home inspector, anything above 75, just call it out. Or don't, if you haven't already, just take a look at these tags. It's a little habit I have now. I always look at these tags because on much bigger houses, it might be different. Those valves come in different sizes. So this one here is basically an average size regulator for a standard size home.
This is the 1-inch model 600, Wilkins 600, a very common regulator because in a lot of cases, you know, a normal size home, a 3 or 2.
And that's a 1-inch in pipe,
exactly. Right? It'll be a 1-inch pipe coming from the meter. So a lot of times you'll have a 1-inch regulator and then it'll go into the house after that point.
Yeah, I'm glad we cleared that up because there is a lot of confusing information about regulators out there.
Right.
It depends on who you ask, is what answer you're going to get. And I'm telling you, if I put 5 different people in a room, I'm going to get probably 4 different answers.
Right.
So I'm glad we covered that. Thank you for that. Thanks for clearing that up. And that little point you made about another home inspector, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have thought of mentioning that.
Right. And yeah, that's always a weird conversation when they're expecting an adjustment and and it really should be replaced.
So you adjust them when you put them in. The takeaway from this is you adjust them when you put them in.
And you set it and forget it.
Set it and forget it. And you said the sweet spot was about 67?
Around 65, 67 PSI is what I aim for, right around there. But here's another thing. So you can set it as high as 75 PSI, but I don't recommend it. I've seen situations where we try to max these things out, get 75 PSI. And my opinion is that when you do that, you kind of push this thing to its limit and they wear out faster. And I've talked to a good friend of mine's, a plumber with 20 years experience. And I brought that up with him too. I said, hey, when we crank these things down to get max pressure out of them, you think they wear out quicker? And he says, yes. So between my experience and his too, we always set them around 65, 67 PSI. And I think it just gives a little leeway in the capacity of the unit and makes it last longer.
Right. Okay. Now I'm going to talk to you as a homeowner for a second. Robert, my water pressure in my shower sucks. What did you do to my system when you put that new regulator in? Oh, well, ma'am, you also, hang on. Yeah. I'll be you now. Yeah. Well, ma'am. So basically, the shower heads that are sold nowadays, they have these restrictors in them.
Yes.
And I actually had Robert drill out mine in my own shower a couple of years ago. And because, once again, it's the pressure, your water pressure could be good. It could be set properly at your regulator, but all these water conservation fixtures that come out nowadays here in California, they're a bit ridiculous. And there's no water pressure at my shower. Technically, there is good water pressure at your shower. It's the shower head restricting the flow. So you can do things to do that if it really bothers you. So my customers, how's the water pressure? What that means is, what's it like coming out of the shower?
Right.
That's the only thing that means when a customer says that. They're not concerned about what's coming in from the street because they don't know that part. They only want to know what's going to hit them on the head when they get in the shower. Is it going to be a lot of, I want high water pressure. I want this. I understand. But a common misconception is it's, one means the other. Yeah.
I've gotten into it with a lot of customers about, the water pressure coming out of their shower. And and how this will come up is their regulator at their house will be broken. So they're getting like over 100 pounds of pressure going in the house. And then I'll bring it up to them like, hey, we need to put a regulator on and bring it back down to like 65 PSI. And they're just like fighting me tooth and nail. They're like, oh no, I want my shower. It needs to be water coming out quick and a lot of pressure. But in a lot of those cases, I've ended up putting the regulator on, and then I'll take the customer to the shower and turn it on, and they don't even notice a difference. They say, "Oh, I don't even notice." Okay. So they were really just fighting me for nothing. I'm sure you can notice a subtle difference.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in reality, when these homes are built, they're designed to work under 80 pounds of pressure, So
Yep.
the fact the regulator went out and now you're getting more pressure, you got used to it.
Yep.
It's kind of too bad. You need to keep it in a safe zone, about 65 pounds, protect everything.
Yep. I'm telling you, you gotta really get this done on your house if you haven't already. Go out, just go to Home Depot, and if you already own a home or you're already living in a home, just go out and buy a little cheap gauge. They sell them at Home Depot.
Yeah, they sell them at Home Depot, Amazon. They're like $10 probably.
Find a pipe that's coming right out. The best recommendation I'll give is as to what hose bib to do it on is one that's coming directly out of the wall of the house.
Exactly.
That'd be the best spot. If you find one that's away from the house that you use to water the grass, that may be on street pressure.
Yeah, if it's coming out of the ground, it could be from the irrigation side.
Yeah.
And it could be unregulated, but if it's coming out of like the side wall of a house or the back wall of a house, it's probably connected to all the water piping under the house, which should be regulated. So that'd be a good place to check from.
Right.
And test gauge it just threads right onto the hose spigot, and you turn it on, and it'll tell you how many PSI you have.
Yep.
And you just want to be under 80 or under 75 is preferred.
And the reason why you really want to make sure your water pressure is under control is because I have seen major leaks and major water damage problems because of this. You do not want that. That is an expensive, huge inconvenience for you. You may have to move furniture. You may have to let mold remediators come in and open up all your walls to get to the source of the leak. I've seen some disasters because of regulators. Trust me, you want to make sure you stay on top of this.
Yeah, good, very good advice.
Yeah. So, all right.